The father of a black CEO is publicly humiliated by a white billionaire family, and the son cancels a $1 billion deal in response. Delivery and cleaning staff must use the back entrance. The icy voice of the receptionist echoed across the marble lobby of the Whitmore National Club, stopping Award Carter, a dignified 63-year-old man, mid-step. He held tightly onto a gold invitation card personally handed to him by his son just the day before. He wore his finest navy blue suit, the same one he wore at his son's Harvard MBA graduation 15 years ago. "Excuse me, I'm here for my son's business luncheon." "Oh, of course," came a dry, condescending voice. Jessica Whitmore, matriarch of the billionaire Whitmore family, approached her heels, clicking sharply across the marble like a gavel announcing judgment. "Let me guess. The new gardener, or a lost driver." Her crisp laugh drew glances from the other guests, suited businessmen from legacy families, all watching like spectators to a car crash. Award felt the heat rise in his chest, but he remained calm, a composure honed over 4 decades as a certified public accountant. It wasn't the first time someone had judged him by appearance before knowing his story. "I'm Award Carter, father of Nicholas Carter, CEO of Carter Logistics." Jessica clapped her hands as if amused by a child's joke. "How adorable," she said. The boy brought his daddy to watch the grown-ups talk business. How touching. Across the room, Nicholas Carter watched the scene unfold as if in slow motion. At 38, he had built a once small family trucking business into an $800 million logistics empire. And the merger with Whitmore Group, a $1 billion deal, was set to be finalized that afternoon, marking the pinnacle of his career. But as Nicholas caught the look of disdain in Jessica's eyes, aimed at the man who had raised him alone after his mother's early death, an old familiar ache returned. The same ache he felt as a boy, watching his father be ignored at school meetings, deemed unimportant because he didn't look like someone who could contribute. Award stood still, but Nicholas recognized that look in his father's eyes, the same man who worked 3 jobs to put him through private school, who sold his own car so Nicholas could buy his first delivery truck, who never once complained about the sacrifices he made. Jessica continued her cruel performance, unaware that every word was being recorded by security cameras and by the discreet smartphones of younger, sharper guests. "I'm sure there's some landscaping work in the back if you're looking. Or maybe the kitchen could use help," she smirked. A Whitmore partner chuckled nearby. "Knowing your place, that's a rare quality these days." The whispers spread like wildfire, forming a circle of humiliation around a man who had built his life with honest labor. That's when Nicholas stepped forward. He walked straight to his father and wrapped him in an embrace, not just of affection, but of recognition, of honor. Then he turned, locking eyes with Jessica, and spoke with a calm, commanding voice that silenced the entire room. "This man taught me that dignity isn't for sale, and today he just taught me the most important lesson of all, how to choose the right business partners." The silence was suffocating. Award looked at his son with a quiet, proud smile. 40 years of sacrifice had just been repaid in full. What Jessica didn't know was that she had just made the worst enemy possible. Drunk on her own arrogance, she turned the moment into a spectacle. "Richard," she called to her husband, who was chatting with other billionaires at the bar. "Come meet the father of our newest business partner." Richard Whitmore strolled over, Cuban cigar in hand, scanning Award from head to toe like a product he didn't intend to buy. "Impressive," he muttered to his wife. "They can dress up when they need to." He didn't even acknowledge the 2 men standing before him. Award felt every word like a blade, but his face remained composed. He'd learned long ago that reacting to contempt only feeds the ego of the contemptuous. Nicholas quietly watched, committing every insult, every mocking laugh, every condescending glance to memory. "My father's been an accountant for 40 years, Nicholas said, his voice flat but sharp as a blade, slicing through the room's sneering atmosphere. 3 jobs at once just so I could go to college." Jessica let out a clear, crystalline laugh. "How touching! And now the little boy wants to play business with the grown-ups." She waved her hand with exaggerated sarcasm. From a neighborhood accountant to billionaire in 1 generation, how very American dream of you. What they didn't know was that Award Carter wasn't just any accountant. For 4 decades, he'd audited small and mid-sized companies, uncovering tax fraud, money laundering, and shady schemes that so-called respectable businessmen thought were buried deep. His reputation for unshakable integrity was legendary among federal lawyers and judges alike. As Jessica carried on with her demeaning performance, Award's mind drifted to the late nights spent combing through legal contracts so his son could understand complicated clauses, to Saturday mornings teaching Nicholas how to read financial statements at the kitchen table, to the quiet pride he felt when his son signed his first $1 million deal. You know, Richard said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, maybe we should reconsider this merger. We wouldn't want our name attached to origins like that. And something shifted in the room. Nicholas didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. But a different energy began radiating from him, calm on the surface, but with the quiet intensity of a storm brewing just beneath. Interesting perspective, Nicholas replied, eyes locked on Richard. Especially coming from someone whose fortune was built on inflated government contracts in the 80s. The silence that followed was not the same as before. Richard choked slightly on his cigar, eyes narrowing. "Excuse me," Nicholas smiled for the first time since entering the club, and it wasn't friendly. "I vet my business partners thoroughly, Richard, especially the ones who like to judge where others come from." Jessica tried to seize back control. "Now listen here, young man." "No," Nicholas cut her off gently. "It's your turn to listen." He turned to the crowd, many of whom were now visibly uncomfortable. "My father taught me this character isn't inherited, it's built. Dignity isn't bought, it's earned, and not every dollar is worth making." Award looked at his son, pride and concern mingling in his eyes. He knew that look. It was the same look his 12-year-old son once wore when he vowed to become a businessman so no child would ever have to watch their father work 3 jobs the way he did. What the Whitmores didn't realize was that every insult was being recorded by the discreet phones of younger guests. Every racially and class-driven remark was becoming evidence, undeniable, irreversible. Bradley Whitmore, the youngest son, stepped in trying to diffuse the tension. "Maybe we went a little too far. It was just a joke." Award spoke for the first time since the encounter began. "Son, this isn't a joke. This is a lesson. You see, some people only reveal who they truly are when they think there will be no consequences." Enraged by the resistance, Jessica decided to go for the final blow. "Security," she called out to 2 men in black suits near the door. "There are clearly some people here who've lost their way." And in that moment, Nicholas realized he had underestimated just how deep the arrogance of this family ran. He also realized something far more important, that this $1 billion deal no longer meant a damn thing compared to something far greater. As the security guards approached, faces uneasy, Nicholas remained calm, so calm it even surprised his father. It was as if he had foreseen every move, merely waiting for them to reveal their true selves, before playing the cards he'd been quietly holding. Every insult only fueled him further, feeding a kind of resolve his opponents couldn't see, a resolve forged by years of watching his father confront prejudice with unwavering dignity, now combined with intel that could keep even the most seasoned executives up at night. By the time the 2 men stepped into the parking lot, Nicholas hadn't said a word. Award sat still, trying to digest what had just unfolded. But Nicholas's mind had already mapped out his next 3 moves. "Dad," Nicholas said softly, opening the door of the Lincoln Navigator, "right now, more than ever, I need you to trust me." Award looked into his son's eyes and saw something achingly familiar, that same cold, determined look he himself had worn 40 years ago, when he vowed never to let anyone define his worth by skin color or bank balance. On the way back to Manhattan, Nicholas called Natasha Rodriguez, his best friend since Harvard, now one of the most formidable commercial lawyers in New York. Natasha had grown up in the same neighborhood as Nicholas, but today she commanded courtrooms and boardrooms alike. "Nat, I need everything you can dig up on the Whitmores, government contracts, sealed lawsuits, political connections, everything." His voice was steady, but Natasha caught the undertone. "Nicholas, what happened?" she asked, already clacking away on her keyboard. "They made the mistake of showing their true faces to the wrong person." Over the past 6 months of negotiations, Nicholas had quietly investigated the Whitmores not out of suspicion, but out of the kind of due diligence smart business demanded. What he'd uncovered had been saved as a last resort. But now, every page of it had taken on a whole new meaning. Meanwhile, back at the Whitmore National Club, the family celebrated what they believed was an easy victory. Jessica raised her glass of Dom Perignon, proud she'd taught them a lesson. You see, apply a little pressure, and they crumble. Richard chuckled to their guests. Bradley, the youngest, looked uneasy. Mom, maybe we went too far. Nicholas Carter isn't just some small-time player. Jessica waved him off. He's just another backyard businessman pretending to matter. Trust me, he'll come crawling back tomorrow begging to sign. What Jessica didn't know was that at that very moment, Nicholas was on the 40th floor of his Manhattan headquarters meeting with a team she couldn't have imagined in her worst nightmares. Natasha stepped in with 3 boxes of documents. She was joined by Marcus Williams, a former FBI investigator specializing in financial crime. Nicholas Marcus began laying out photos and spreadsheets across the conference table. You won't believe what we've uncovered in the last 6 months. And what they found was staggering government contracts with inflated bids from the 1980s, multi-million-dollar settlements to silence racial discrimination lawsuits, shady connections with politicians to legalize environmentally harmful projects. This one, Natasha said, tapping a document, is a $2 million confidential settlement with a black family in 2010. They sued Whitmore Industries for systemic discrimination. The family was pressured into signing a non-disclosure agreement. Nicholas examined every page, his eyes growing distant. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't about one corrupt contract or one personal insult. This was a pattern, a deeply rooted generational structure of harm. The humiliation his father endured was only the tip of the iceberg. What lay beneath was something far more toxic, and it had been hidden for far too long. There's more, Marcus said as he connected his laptop to the large screen. We've located 7 former employees willing to go on record about what it was like working at Whitmore. All of them were forced to sign the same kind of non-disclosure agreements. Ward Carter remained silent throughout the entire presentation, watching his son orchestrate something that had clearly been in the works for a long time. Finally, he asked, "You knew this would happen today?" Nicholas turned to his father, his gaze a mixture of sorrow and unwavering resolve. "I didn't know you would be the one humiliated today. But I knew sooner or later they'd show their true colors, because people like the Whitmores, they can only hide who they are for so long." Natasha broke into the father-son moment. Nicholas, we've got a window of opportunity here. Technically, the deal hasn't been canceled yet. You could still go back tomorrow and sign. Why would I do that? Nicholas asked. She smiled, a predator's smile. Because imagine the weight. When they realize the man they tried to humiliate now holds enough evidence to destroy not just their company, but the legacy their families spent generations building. Nicholas looked out the panoramic window, New York City glowing under the sunset. Every light represented a family, a story, a dream, one that could either rise or collapse depending on decisions made in rooms like this. Marcus broke the silence. One more thing. The merger with Carter Logistics isn't just beneficial to you, it's critical for them. Without it, they'll hit a liquidity crisis in under 18 months. Ward smiled for the first time since they left the country club. So they need us more than we need them. Exactly, Natasha nodded, and now Nicholas has something they never expected. Not just the power to say yes or no, but the power to choose the terms. Nicholas stayed quiet for a long moment. Not because of the spreadsheets, but because of the moral weight behind the decision he was about to make. This deal was no longer a contract. It was about justice. It was about truth. It was about dignity. And when he finally turned back to face the team, there was something different in his eyes, a fire that told them something extraordinary was about to happen. It was the look of a man who had found the intersection between moral clarity and strategic power. And the Whitmores would soon learn to fear that combination. The next morning, Nicholas returned to the Whitmore National Club, wearing the exact same suit he had worn the day before. Jessica and Richard were waiting for him in the grand lobby, brimming with confidence. Surrounding them were lawyers, financial journalists, all invited to witness the signing of a multi-billion-dollar merger. "I knew you'd come crawling back," Jessica whispered, a cruel smile creeping across her lips as Nicholas walked toward the gleaming mahogany table where the contract lay ready. Men like you always come running when reality hits. Nicholas gave a slight smile and opened his leather briefcase. But instead of pulling out a pen, he pulled out a sealed envelope. Before we discuss the merger, he said, I think we need to clear up a few misunderstandings about the Whitmore family. Jessica laughed, but this time there was an edge of nervousness to it. What is this nonsense, young man? Nicholas opened the envelope and laid out several photographs across the table. This is Jennifer Martinez, fired from your company in 2010 after reporting harassment by white supervisors. Non-disclosure settlement $2 million, he continued. This is Roberto Silva, a senior engineer of 15 years terminated 1 week after he questioned why no employees of color had ever been promoted to the executive level. Payout $1.5 million. The silence that followed had never existed in this room before. Richard tried to interrupt. Now listen, this is confidential material. That's right, Nicholas replied, voice steady as stone. It was confidential. Until 7 former employees chose to break their NDAs this morning. Every one of them is ready to speak about the systemic racism at Whitmore Industries. Jessica went pale. You can't prove anything. Nicholas opened his laptop and projected a spreadsheet onto the wall behind him. 15 years of data, 0 executives of color, non-white termination rate, 300% higher, average salary for identical roles significantly lower. His voice was calm, almost academic. Numbers don't lie, Jessica. The reporter's cameras began clicking rapidly. Richard tried to seize control. This is an ambush. You can't use that data, but I can. Nicholas interrupted, plugging a recorder into the sound system. Through the grand hall, Jessica's voice echoed crystal clear. I'm sure there's some gardening job out there if you need, followed by Richard's cruel laughter and the mocking, know your place. Jessica shot up from her chair, the wood crashing behind her. You had no right to record that. Nicholas remained composed. Actually, I did. You were in a public venue, multiple witnesses, and that was just the appetizer. At that moment, Natasha Rodriguez entered the room, holding an even larger briefcase in hand. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, she began, I'm Natasha Rodriguez, legal counsel, representing 7 former employees who just filed a class action lawsuit against your company. We're seeking $50 million in damages for emotional harm and systemic racial discrimination. Richard staggered. This is extortion. No, Nicholas said calmly. This is justice. He closed his briefcase and turned to the reporters. In the next 5 minutes, you'll receive a complete dossier, including recordings, testimonies, and questionable tax filings tied to the Whitmore Group. Jessica scrambled to salvage control. You're destroying your own career. No one wants to work with someone who breaks NDAs. Nicholas smiled for the first time with genuine satisfaction. Funny coming from you, because I just uncovered something fascinating about your inflated government contracts from the 1980s, he signaled. Marcus Williams walked in, arms full of boxes. Systematic tax fraud, overinflated quotes on defense deals, bribes to government officials. Marcus read each charge aloud, statutes of limitations long expired but damaging enough to wipe out any last scrap of reputation. That's when Richard Whitmore finally understood they hadn't messed with the wrong guy. They had messed with the one man who had intelligence, resources, and worst of all, patience. The kind of patience that destroys you systematically and legally. Bradley Whitmore, the youngest son, silent until now, leaned toward his father and whispered, Dad, if the merger falls through, and with these lawsuits, the company will be bankrupt in 6 months. Nicholas heard every word. He turned slowly to Bradley. You seem to be the only one in this family whose brain still works. I have an offer, Jessica shrieked. Don't you dare speak to my son. Calm down, Mother, Bradley said, his eyes locked on Nicholas. What's the offer? Carter Logistics will acquire the operational assets of Whitmore Industries at 40 cents on the dollar. A fair price considering your company's reputation is about to go up in smoke. Nicholas paused, letting the weight of his words settle. You get to keep your homes, a modest income, or you can choose complete bankruptcy and decades of public disgrace. Richard opened his mouth to protest, but for the first time, Jessica stayed quiet. She simply raised a hand, signaling him to stop. Nicholas calmly closed his folder, collected his papers. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer disappears, and you'll face the consequences of 40 years of arrogance and racism alone. As he turned to leave, Award followed him, his eyes quiet but filled with pride. Nicholas stopped one last time, glancing back at Jessica. Oh, and Jessica, about what you said yesterday. My father could work as a gardener here. You were right, he will. He stepped closer. As the new owner of this place. The sound of the door slamming behind him echoed like a gavel in a courtroom. And in the wreckage of silence that followed, 3 generations of privilege and prejudice began to crumble like a sandcastle swallowed by the storm they created themselves. 47 hours later. In a quiet law office in Midtown Manhattan, Jessica Whitmore signed the merger agreement. No designer dress, no champagne, only the hollow eyes of someone who just lost the empire she thought would last forever. Carter Logistics assumed all operating assets of Whitmore Industries, one of the largest takeovers in logistics history, signed not with triumph, but in the bitter quiet of a dethroned dynasty. 2 weeks later, Nicholas stood outside the newly renamed headquarters, what used to be Whitmore Tower. The name had been stripped away. In its place, a clean line of stainless steel letters read, "The Carter Foundation for Economic Justice." The entire building now served as a hub for business training, job counseling, and micro-loans focused on entrepreneurs who were once overlooked people of color, immigrants, and the formerly incarcerated. The ground floor, once the exclusive boardroom of Whitmore executives, had been transformed into a community cafe run by those the company had once refused to even interview. In a small back room, Award Carter watered plants in the hydroponic garden, right in the spot where he'd been insulted not even a month ago. A brown-skinned teenager, an intern from Brooklyn, peeked in and asked, "Are you Mr. Carter, the one they called?" The Gardner Award smiled, eyes gleaming. "Yeah, that's me. So, are you the boss now?" Award shook his head. "Nah. A boss is someone who helps others grow. Me, I just tend the soil and help the seeds take root." Upstairs in the top-floor conference room, Nicholas stood at the front leading orientation for the company's new hires. Among them, Jennifer Martinez and Roberto Silva, once silenced, now empowered. "We're not just building a company, we're building a model. A place where the best ideas rise no matter where you come from, what color your skin is, or what language you speak at home." He scanned the room, voice dropping into something softer but sharper. "They thought we'd bow our heads, stay quiet, disappear. But they forgot something. Some wounds don't weaken us. They sharpen us like a blade." Finally, out in the garden, Award Carter, now respectfully known as Mr. Carter, sat reading beside a blooming orchid. Nicholas walked out with 2 glasses of iced tea. "It's done, Dad." Award didn't answer. He just raised his glass for a quiet, meaningful clink. "You know," Nicholas said, "a lot of people asked me, why didn't you just burn Whitmore to the ground?" Award set his book aside, looking up. "And what did you say?" Nicholas smiled. "I told them if we destroy with hatred, then we're no better than them. But if we rebuild with justice, they'll never forget our name." Award looked at his son, and for the first time in his life, he didn't just see a man who had overcome adversity. He saw someone who had reshaped history with his own 2 hands. Not everyone born in the shadows is meant to live there forever, because once they learn to light themselves up, entire empires will tremble. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, like the video if you believe justice can come from the smallest voices. Subscribe so you never miss more powerful and true stories like this one. Comment if you've ever stood up for someone you love, even when no one else believed you.